Yo, Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be looking at an extremely fun asymmetric setup that has great synergy, strong two-handed options, and fantastic mix-ups. On its own, the Potta is going to be a beast just given its two-handed running heavy to heavy attack combo, but one-handed is still amazing due to its range, super fast heavy attacks, and guaranteed poise breaks. And then to complement the high speed and range of the Potta, we're going to be running an offhand large club. This is going to offer fantastic damage, also great range, and allows us to vortex players like we're seeing in this clip. To really understand why this build is so potent, we're going to be breaking this video down into 4 parts. So first we'll take a look at the build itself, then see how this performs in one-on-one situations, and how we can utilize this in multi-opponent situations and invasions. And then lastly, we'll take a deep dive into the frame data of the Potta as well as the large club, and kind of look at why they work together from a more technical perspective. Real quick, I am trying to get to 10K subscribers before the end of the year, so if you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, it would really help me out. So the first thing you'll notice with this build is that it's a pure strength build. We do have 20 dexterity, mostly because we want to be able to use the great bow, but this is going to be pretty solid at level 139, especially because we're running the great club that has a scaling and strength, and then the Potta with flaming strike is also going to benefit from the strength version rather than the dexterity version of this build. I think a dex build would make a lot of sense for this type of setup as well. You could do lightning and fusion, but for me, I found that this was very solid on a strength build. We'll also run this as a setup using the Shard of Alexander as well as the two-headed turtle talisman, so stamina recovery and damage on our Ash of War is kind of our main goal, but we can swap this over to a Rotten Wing Sword insignia as well as Millicent's prosthesis if we want to go for more vortexes and just get a lot of damage that way. So good options there. We also have 115 poise with our armor set, which is pretty solid, and I definitely recommend higher poise in most situations. Alright, so our first opponent here is going to be running the two-handed light greatsword that's poison infused, so we really need to respect their jumping heavies as well as neutral heavies, and we're going to be going for this offhand large club attack into fully charged heavy with the Potta. And that's something we're going to be breaking down in a bunch of detail in the frame data section of this video, so I hope you'll stick around to the end so you can understand why it's so consistent. Now we do need to back up and heal our poison. We actually use that as a bait to try to get them to go for a jumping attack, and we can punish it with an offhand large club attack. Next up, we're going to be going for the offhand large club as a roll catch. So this opponent is going to be going for some spells, but we're going to buff our Potta to just try to convince them we're going to be going for light attacks, and then go for a first L1, follow that up with a running attack with the Potta, go for an L1, and then a jumping attack that's free aimed, and we're able to finish off this opponent. Next, we'll see our opponent running a Shamshir and then switch over to a curved greatsword. So we're going to need to look out for the hyper armor that comes with the curved greatsword, and we're going to try to reaction roll everything. This is a little dangerous if you're not confident in your reaction rolls, just because their ability to mix things up with crouching attacks, heavy attacks, sword dance, and whatnot is going to be quite scary, but here we're able to just knock them out of the air and consistently get anti-airs with both the heavy attack on the Potta as well as the offhand large club, and there they just mash a little too hard and we come out with the victory. Our next opponent is going to be running Mesmer's Soldier's Spear, which has a very mean fully charged heavy attack, so we need to look out for that for sure, and we actually get a little bit vortexed here in the beginning, so we need to back up, just kind of reset back to neutral, and here we can see the Flaming Strike with the Potta being quite useful as a roll catch as our opponent rolls in, and then just a little bit of quick R1s can go for a little bit of chip damage with the backswing on the Potta, which does come out quite quickly. Now we are going to back off a little bit, try to just find a good opening and maybe bait a roll. Here we get that backswing to do some damage, and just the continued R1s are so damaging when they're buffed with Flaming Strike. Our final opponent in the duel portion of the showcase is going to be running Moonveil, so we're going to need to look out for those tasty L2s and just try to roll in, potentially get some swings with either the offhand large club or maybe go for a running attack with the Potta. Both are pretty nice. And here we get a nice roll catch with the offhand large club. It does come out with pretty good timing for roll catching, and because of the range, it's just very nice. And here we go for a couple quick swings and switch over to the two-handed moveset, which is something I highly recommend, especially if you're running this on a strength build. We get a crouching attack, and then we have just the very quick swings with the Potta, and we can go for one final L1 for the finish. Alright, now this first invasion is going to involve basically as many players as physically possible in the world, but we do like the fact that we're in the tower settlement, so we're happy to give this a go. Now, this is going to involve many Ashes of War from many different players, so we're going to focus here on this player that's running the Beast Jaw, just because that's probably the most annoying Ash of War of all the three that we're going to see in the mix. Now, we go ahead and grab a roll-in backstab and begin to pressure this player with the two-handed moveset of the Pata. We're hoping to get a roll, and we're able to punish that with a running light attack, and just kind of back off here as we see some more aggression from both the host and the Phantom. Now, the Ruin's Greatsword is definitely going to be kind of the bane of our existence throughout this invasion, as it tends to desync and come out fairly slowly, whereas Ghost Flame Ignition is very slow but very reactable as well. So we go ahead and get the host slept, hoping to get a little time alone with the Phantom, but we do see some desyncage with the Ruin's Greatsword Ash of War as it comes up and over the fountain, but is invisible on the other half of the fountain. So unfortunate there, we're going to need to back off, get ourselves back to full HP, and come in and focus on the Phantom here. Now, the host has bravely run away at this point, so that gives us a little bit of time to get some nice backstabs on the Phantom, and we can hopefully aggress them with the two-handed moveset, going for a fully charged heavy, which comes out in two parts, which is not a bad idea for a wake up. Unfortunately, neither of them connect, but another roll-in backstab will do the trick as we get this player to very low HP. We're going to try to zone a little bit with the Sleep Pot and manage to trade with the Pata as the Phantom is going for a number of swings. Now, we are in a one-on-one situation very momentarily with the host, but a blue does get summoned back in using the one-handed moveset on the Dark Moon Greatsword. So we're going to again throw a Sleep Pot, hoping to zone and get them to low HP as quickly as possible with the running heavy on the Pata, and then swap over to the Great Club for a bit of hyper armor, which allows us to finish them off with some light attacks. Now, again, we're close to a one-on-one situation with the host, but wait, there's more. We do see a hunter summon back into the world, and this is going to be a very classic hunter running the Moonveil, which we're going to need to respect as much as possible. Fortunately, we don't get hit by either of those first heavy attacks on the Moonveil Ash of War. We need to back up a little bit, and we're going to get our HP back to full. Now, we do see these players just kind of gathered up in this hallway, which really just screams throw a Sleep Pot and see if we can get some aggression there as they go for some Ashes of War and incantations. We're hoping to get the jumping light attack with the Pata. It doesn't quite connect, but we do get a running heavy in and get stunned from behind from the host. So we need to look out for those attacks. Again, they're going for projectiles and Ashes of War, so we're going to back off, heal, use the doorway to just get some cover and throw some Frost Pots, which is going to boost our physical damage as we land attacks with both the Pata or the large club. Now, we are going to use this moment to get some boiled crab, just reduce our incoming damage, and shut down the host for a second with a light attack on the Great Club. Now, we were hoping to land rain of arrows, but unfortunately the Phantom uses the lovely range on the Moonveil to get off their Ash of War and shut down rain of arrows. But here we go for running heavy attack on the Pata, finish off that player, and focus here on the host again. So we're going to go for some light attacks, swap over to the parry shield in our main hand, as we do note that another player has been summoned into the world. So we're on a bit of a ticking timer. We'd like to finish them off as quickly as possible. So we go for the parry, the weapon swap post, and then we have just a little bit of time alone with this Phantom who's using their shield quite liberally, but we get the guard break and do manage to riposte them before the invasion's over. Our next invasion is going to be a pretty intense one. This was the first one that I ran with this build, so you'll note that I was using Wild Strikes on the large club, and we'll get into more detail about kind of the change from Wild Strikes to a different Ash of War a little bit later, but we do see a decent amount of chip damage that we're getting off on these players pretty early, and we haven't actually taken damage at this point, so we need to back up a little bit. Again, we're going to see what we can do with Wild Strikes, but it's just kind of difficult to land unless you have players that are pretty willing to mash into it, and given the fact that someone is going for a parry, which is kind of scary in this attempt, we're going to need to respect that a little bit and try to go for unusual timings. Now, we also do see Swift Slash from one player, which is definitely nerfed, but given the amount of space we have, can be a bit scary. And here we're not sure if they're going to rush in, so we go ahead and throw out a Flaming Strike, hoping that the lingering hitbox of Flaming Strike might catch their Swift Slash. However, it does not, and again, we need to back off here. We're getting hit with some arrows. We need to look out for Wrath of Gold. And really just the chip damage in this invasion was quite powerful, really finding opportunities to heal as well as get in burst damage was a bit of a struggle against these players. So I'm not sure if the Phantoms were over leveled. It was, tough to really make a big dent in any of their resources, and we'll be seeing a little bit later why it was so difficult as well. So we go for the Hyper Armor on the large club, which is somewhat helpful. We managed to dodge the lightning as well as the other incantations from that Phantom, and we're just going to try to back off a little bit and see if we can go for some turn and burns with Wild Strikes as well as get some Sleep Pots in the mix. So here we do land an attack with the large club, but due to the Frenzy incantation from behind, we again need to back off, and here we can see Heal from Afar entering the picture, which, yeah, that's a really tough one to deal with in a group of 3 where you can't really easily focus the player that's running Heal from Afar. And we're going to continue to use pots. This is depleting our FP a little bit, and here we can see as we go for running attack, just this parry spam coming out, which is making our ability to just deliver as much damage as possible a little bit less. Like, it's very dangerous to be throwing out these different attacks when Golden Parry is just also being thrown out. That parry can be quite scary. So we're doing the best that we can here, delivering some running attacks. We also need to look out for the Frenzy incantation. If they go for the grab, they'll probably one-shot us, and we get the host slept and get a decent amount of damage, but everyone is running a decent amount of vigor too. So between a lot of vigor and Heal from Afar, it's really hard to get these players to low health, and we start getting blendered a bit. We go for Wild Strikes and they go for a parry, and because that is parryable, it's kind of scary again. And here we get a lot of damage off pretty quickly, but our ability to get in and finish any one player is quite low with the amount of pressure coming. So we're gonna back off. We've hit a bit of a dead end, so I'm not sure if there's actually a hallway we could go down there, but due to the low light situation, it's really hard to find that. And at this point, it was maybe a little bit more ideal to just back out into an area that we know we have an escape from. So at this point, I believe we're out of HP. Or out of heals rather, and have very low HP, so we need to back off. Here we go for a pretty bold turn and burn with Wild Strikes that allows our opponents to catch up to us, and they finish us off. So this was a very tough invasion, and one that demonstrated to me that Wild Strikes was absolutely not the play. And we'll see a change over to Stormcaller on the large club, and in this next one we'll see how that change really works to great effect in a similar situation where we have a lot of aggression from multiple players. We see the Smith Script Shield just coming in on a very consistent basis. We have other spells as well, some arrows. So really this was similarly challenging invasion, and we can see how just kind of the change in Ash of War on the large club is going to do what we need it to do. So again, we're just trying to back off, take as little chip damage as possible, and here we try to funnel everyone into this space between the 2 tents, and we switch over to Stormcaller, and here we get that burst damage. So even though that player had 1700 HP, we're able to get one player down to very low HP and then go for the follow-up with the Pata and really get this to work ideally in an invasion situation. So I just wanted to share both the loss as well as this win because it demonstrates kind of the mindset I have when I'm putting these builds together, and potentially how someone who's invading can put together their own builds. You know, when something isn't working, you see consistently that Wild Strikes isn't landing, you're not getting the burst damage you need, use a different Ash of War, change it up a little bit. So I hope that makes sense. I had some good feedback about, you know, how I should maybe incorporate more losses into the showcase, and I hope that, you know, it's both instructive, adds a bit of narrative, and, you know, maybe is helpful for how others can approach build creation. So here we have a pretty nice start where we're able to knock off one player and finish them just from the Great Bow over to a weapon swap, and then here we see Lion's Claw from the host. We managed to get a backstab on them, but rather than chasing them down, we're going to focus on the Phantom as they go for some dragon incantations. We throw out our L1 followed up by Flaming Strike, and now that this is on fire, it's going to be able to blow up the barrels, and the barrels do finish off our opponent as well as do almost all our HP, so we need to get back to full health. And now this host is in quite a bad spot as they're surrounded by PvE and myself, and we just go for a crouching attack to catch them out of the air during Lion's Claw. So good 3v1 and really fun moment with the Great Bow. I definitely enjoyed that. Our next invasion is going to involve Shrek, which is always a good time, and we're going to use Endure on the Starfist just because we didn't know if we'd get knocked off of that ledge as we came in for the approach, and because we have Endure, we're going to continue to use that as we chase down the Phantom that we've gotten to very low HP, and we'll be swapping back over to the main setup. But I think in that moment, having Endure made a lot of sense, and we can see how useful it was for the chase down as we didn't get stunned while we were trying to finish off that last Phantom there. Now we are going to buff up a bit because we can see that there's a lot of damage coming our way, and the player with the halberd is doing a good job of kind of providing consistent pressure. So we're going to see if we can get them frostbitten, just increase our physical damage and see what we can do. So the uplifting aromatic does save us from one hit, which is great, and then a blue does come in and we see some Ash of War from the host that's just not great. So at this point we have a decision to make. Do we want to either look behind us and try to reaction roll what's going on, or do we want to focus on getting away and just kind of roll at consistent or inconsistent timings? So I decided to just kind of keep an eye on where I was running, and that's a decision you need to make as an invader most of the time unless you know the area really well, is do you want to be looking at the players behind you, or do you want to look in front of you and make sure that you don't fall off a ledge? So I opted not to fall off the ledge and managed to escape and then finish off the Phantom. Now the blue is doing a ton of damage with their spells, which is unfortunate, so we're going to try to shut that down as best we can with the running heavy to heavy true combo on the Pata. We get them frostbitten, which means we're going to be doing a little bit more damage here, and we do catch their roll with the heavy attack and followed up with another heavy attack. So really nice moment there, and we can focus here on Shrek. And Shrek just kind of gets vortexed for a minute. He pulls out a parry shield, but we're able to shut things down with the Pata and then give this new blue a wave as they're actually pretty chill. So we can move on here to our next invasion. Again, a group of 3, and we'll need to look out for the tier 3 stun from the Colossal Sword, as well as, oh, actually that's a great sword, my apologies. So that's going to be a tier 2 stun from the Blasphemous Blade, and then we also have the Falx in the mix, which we very much need to respect, especially the follow-up attack that this player does seem partial to. So we're going to back off, see if the PvE can help us out a little bit. It dies pretty quick, so again, we'll just kind of switch our talismans and get set up for successive attacks. And we throw a Frost Pot and get the Falx player to be frostbitten, which is great. And then as this player with the Blasphemous Blade is pretty aggressive, we go for Flaming Strike to shut things down, go for a light attack with the Pata, and then go ahead and see if we can get anyone slept here. We are actually able to get both players slept, but due to the frostbite, we're not able to deliver any damage in that moment, but it is going to reduce their FP, so we're happy to see that. Now, this player has pulled out Blind Spot, but fortunately, they're not running a ton of HP, so we can shut that down. And then here we see some pretty high latency with the host, but fortunately, we're able to get a nice parry here, followed up with the weapon swap, grab the riposte, and finish them off. Our final invasion, before we look at the frame data as well as some poise data, we're going to be involved with a fat rolling host that is Runarch. So, kind of balances out there a little bit maybe, but we're going to need to focus on the Phantoms first, which are doing a good job of applying pretty consistent pressure. So even though they don't have a ton of HP between the Frost Pots as well as the Sleep Pots and light rolling, it's a little bit difficult. We also have a desynced dragon in the background, so we're really not going to want to go that way because that can only do damage to us, and yeah, it's just a pretty big nuisance. So we see some spells coming our way from, I believe, the light rolling player, so we're going to need to back off, heal, and then try to get ourselves in a better position. We know that we can either knock players off with the Great Bow as they come forward on this kind of treacherous runway here, and we're going to see what we can do. We're going to heal our Frostbite and just see if we can get players baited forward. And we're actually going to be seeing some pretty smart plays from the spell casting Light Roller as they come across this bridge. So we wait a little bit, we know that we're going to jump, try to get our arrow off, and here we do manage to hit one Phantom, but we don't actually knock them down all the way, so they stay up on the platform, and here we see some Endure from the light rolling player. So a great call by them to avoid getting knocked off the ledge and get across that bridge successfully, start applying pressure, meaning I can't focus on the other players either. So they did a good job of reaction rolling most of these swings and rolling around me, which is going to kind of shut down the Pata, and here we take a lot of damage. Even though they're at very low HP, we need to back off and just avoid these incoming night sorceries. So we go ahead and just kind of hide around the PvE and try to avoid the Ash of War from the host. PvE is going to be doing a lot of damage here. We're going to swap our talismans just a little bit to get some more HP from our flask, and we're going to use our great bow to just see if we can land a little extra damage. Now the host is very nearly dead, so we're going to go and start aggressing here. We do see that PvE is putting in work, but we get hit by the frost pot, which slows us down, and heal from afar does come into the mix. So we're going to go ahead again, heal the frostbite if we can grab the right boluses, and begin aggressing these phantoms here. So we're throwing out random sleep pots, just unsure where players are going to go. We shut down the frost pot from this player, and we get them to pretty low HP. We need to look out for Gavel of Hyema, and we can see this player is doing a good job of kind of covering their phantom. So that seemed to be the most skilled player in the mix, and we're not going to focus them until we get rid of the other phantom first, because they seem to be a little bit of an easier target. Now, again, we need to back off, kind of wait for our turn, as a lot of incantations and spells are coming our way, but the host is very nearly dead, so that's going to give us a time to focus on these other players. We try to get the phantom that's light rolling to pretty low health, so they feel like they need to back off, and then we're able to focus the other phantom and finish them off quite quickly. Now, they give us a nod emote, which is kind of funny. We need to look out for the Ash of War from the host. We throw a sleep pot, and then it seems like this light rolling player is out of flask, so we're able to shut it down with one swing from the large club and then finish them off with the pata. And now we pull out our trusty parry shield, as we're going to be going for, again, another parry. I had a lot of fun going for parries in the showcase, just trying to get the timing back down and see what I can do. And here we do successfully get the parry and the weapon swap for the finish. All right, so before we actually look at the frame data, we're going to be looking at the poise damage in this spreadsheet for the pata. And this spreadsheet's a great way to just very quickly at a glance understand what's going on with poise damage for the weapon you're using. This first section here is going to be showing us the one-handed light attack chain. So for the pata, we can see that that does 110 poise damage on the first hit and 67.5 on subsequent hits. So that's going to be a lot on the first hit, and not a ton of players, especially in invasions, are going to be running 110 poise, so you'll be able to poise break pretty frequently with just a one-handed light attack. And then you won't be able to poise break as easily with the follow-up swings, but they'll probably have rolled out by that point. Now, here we can see that the one-handed R2 is going to be doing 210 poise damage, which is guaranteed poise break unless they're in hyper armor. And then the fully charged version is going to be 825, which is pretty massive and might actually poise break somebody that's in hyper armor. So it depends on the weapon, depends exactly what's going on, but it's just good to know that. We can take a quick look at just what's going on for the running attack. So running light is going to do 110, but running heavy is going to be doing more than we need. So 210 again. Fantastic. Lots of guaranteed poise breaks with this weapon, especially with the heavy attacks. If you wanted to look at the two-handed moveset, you can just take a quick glance here, but you should just click the description and pull this up on your own and just kind of explore in more detail. That's kind of what I'd recommend. But let's go ahead and switch over to the frame data. And here we're going to be looking at kind of one interaction just to try to give you the tools to understand how to set things up and why we can kind of go with our intuition and then take a better look at to see how kind of correct our intuition was. So let's say we're intuiting that the offhand great club, or large club rather, has a very consistent roll catch with the fully charged heavy attack with the pata. So basically you're going for an offhand large club swing, and then you're going for a fully charged heavy attack. And we find that that's a consistent roll catch, but let's try to understand why. So frame 16, our offhand large club swing comes out, and let's say our opponent goes for a dodge. We're going to be using the damage level 2 here, because if we take a look at the large club params, we can see that that's doing damage level 2. So that just tells us how long our opponent's going to be a hit stun for. And we can see that their first dodge is available here on frame 41. And then we can also take a look at this data here, the right attack. So let's say we're going to go for our fully charged heavy with the pata. We can begin that fully charged heavy down here, and that's going to start up on frame 35. Meanwhile, our opponent has started their dodge, and they're going to be in iframes starting on frame 41 and continuing into frame 56. Now, before they're able to actually move or dodge, which starts on frame 62 and 63, we're going to be able to land our attack on frame 60 with the fully charged heavy attack on the Pata. So we can see here that the attack comes out perfectly in this section here where they're in the recovery frames of their dodge. They can't do anything else. They're out of iframes, and here comes our fully charged heavy attack with the Pata. So this just kind of confirms our intuition that yes, the fully charged heavy attack with the Pata is going to be a very consistent roll catch for our opponent if they roll directly out of stun from an offhand large club attack. So this is where frame data can be really helpful, and just kind of, you have to kind of understand the situation and kind of different mechanics going on, but setting stuff up like this can be really useful, and knowing that you have something good on your hands can be confirmed by frame data. And real quick, we'll just take a look at some of the other attacks. So the charged heavy attack on the Pata comes out frame 26, which is pretty solid. And then if we actually go for the uncharged version, that comes out on frame 15, which is very, very fast. It's, I believe, 2 frames slower than both the light attack as well as like a offhand hand axe. I believe that's also 13 frames. So this kind of just demonstrates how fast the heavy attacks are on the Pata, and given the range and the fact that they're a guaranteed poise break, it just really speaks volumes to why this is such a strong weapon. Even if you don't incorporate the running heavy into heavy attack true combo, which is also something you can explore with the frame data, but everyone kind of understands that to be pretty good at this point. Well, maybe not everyone, but a large kind of group of PvPers do. And if you want to explore that, I think this is a great tool for that, but I just kind of wanted to talk through the kind of pseudo combo you get with a roll catch on the heavy attack. And you can also see here that the R12, which also comes out quite fast, 26 frames for 2 attacks on the R11 and the R12 just demonstrates how useful the light attacks are and why you can really bully people with low poise with just the one-handed moveset. So I don't want to talk too much about just all the different frame data. There's tons of things you can explore. You can set up so many different things with this tool, but I've gotten positive feedback about this before, and I think it's fun to just kind of explore a part of it, and then kind of anyone can just go off and explore more pseudo combos or true combos and see what they like. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I really would appreciate it, and I hope you have a good day.